morning, Nigerians, and thank you for joining us this morning on Daybreak on Trust TV, reaching you live from the nation's capital. It's a super beautiful morning, not just because the weather is very friendly this morning, but then again because it's the International Women's Day. We congratulate all Nigerian women today for all the beautiful things that they do in their families and the society. So on Trust TV, on Daybreak this morning, we're going to give you, this is a show which brings to you information that you can use and to also keep you abreast with everything happening across the country. I'm not doing this alone. My co-anchor Ayuba will be joining us shortly. For now, let's go into the headlines. Ganduje pardons 12 inmates sentenced to death. Why I am not part of team defending Tinubu's victory in court, Keyamo. Court of Appeal to rule on INEC Peter Obi's case on Wednesday. Now let's take a look at the details. Kano State Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has pardoned 12 inmates on death row and commuted the death sentences of 6 others to life imprisonment. The governor had, in an interview with Trust TV in 2021, revealed that governors were afraid of signing death warrants of convicts because they did not want to order the execution and later find out the person did not deserve to die. A statement on Tuesday by the spokesman of the Kano Command of the Nigeria Correctional Service, Ms. Bau Lawan Nasarawa, said the governor also pardoned 4 female inmates with long-term sentences based on their good behavior and industry as recommended by the service. The governor also gave 5,000 naira fare to each of the released inmates to enable them reunite with their families. According to the statement, some of the pardoned inmates have spent 25 years awaiting execution. Festus Keyamo, a senior advocate of Nigeria, has explained his absence from the legal team defending Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, the president-elect, in court. The Independent National Electoral Commission has declared Tinubu winner of the February 25th presidential election, but his major rivals in the exercise headed for the court to challenge his victory. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party and Peter Obi of Labour Party are both claiming to have won the election, and they have hired lawyers to prove their case in court. On Tuesday morning, the list of Tinubu's 48-man legal counsel went viral on social media. The ruling All Progressives Congress also released a 12-man list of senior lawyers to defend the president-elect. The Court of Appeal Abuja has slated Wednesday, March 8th, to rule on the application by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to be allowed to reconfigure the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, it used for the presidential election. A 3-member panel led by Justice Joseph Ike also adjourned to rule on the application filed by Labour Party and its candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, to be allowed to conduct a physical inspection of all the BVAS that were used for the polls. Onyechi Peazu counsel to Obi said the essence of the application was to enable them to extract data embedded in the BVAS, which represents the actual results from the polling units. Ikpeazu prayed the court to allow them to conduct a physical inspection of all the BVAS that were used for the presidential election, as this is to ensure that the evidence is preserved before the BVAS are reconfigured by INEC. He added that if they are wiped out, it will affect the substance of the case. Now let's take a look at some packages. The security forces have been commended for the critical role they played during the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections. Residents in Benue State said the officers exhibited professionalism and decorum during the polls. Jimmy Azande reports.
Before the elections, there were a series of workshops aimed at fortifying security personnel to play neutral roles during the elections. The training was put to practice in the elections of 25th February, as recounted by Benue residents, who recommended the security forces for professionalism.
The conduct of the security in the last general election, as long as Makodi was peaceful and okay, they were all going all over to check polling unit by polling to make sure that there was no crisis. Even in some places that voting could not hold because of misappropriation of materials, security were on ground to make sure that the people there conduct themselves and they wait for the next day for the election to hold in those places.
The Nigerian security over the last election It was very, very perfect. Compared to the other election we have been witnessed and we have been passing through, this last election, presidential election, was so peacefully, and the security in Benue State has made sure that they maintain the peace in this country and in Benue State.
I think my local government, they have really tried. They give us a free and fair election because they conducted the election very well. Everything was well. Everything was well. So we appreciate their work.
The residents also called on the forces to extend same professionalism to the March 11 gubernatorial and House of Assembly elections across the country.
I feel there should be more people for security because most of the parties that lose the election, they are now saying they are going to announce the election and they are going to disrupt the election at the polling unit. And I urge the security to come out in mass to protect the election to make sure that everything goes orderly and peaceful.
I really appreciate this level of security, and I also believe this coming election on the 11th of March will be the same, and I request from federal government to send more security to protect lives and properties, to secure the election. We want free and fair election in this country. The same like the last election is the security that make free and fair election. Without security, we cannot make free and fair election in this country.
I will call on the security to come out on the 11th of March to conduct the election as they did previously.
No reported case of security officers meddling in the election process was recorded in Benue State. In the past elections, however, security officers were accused of connivance and complacency before, during and after the polls in favor of preferred candidates.
Thank you, Jimmy Azande, for that report. And yes, my co-anchor, Ayuba Ilia, is finally here. Ayuba, you almost have known me this morning.
Stella.
Start by wishing me happy Women's
Day. Lest I forget. Yes, today is a special day for women.
Very special.
In the world. And this is to take the time out to say thank you for all that you do. Thank you for keeping our world, in a way that it is right now. Women are managers. We appreciate them in homes and, in our offices and everywhere. Just every man has one mother, sister, daughter, as a woman. So it's a day that we all need to celebrate and also remind men to be, civil with women.
Women do so much for the society that sometimes it goes, it's like it's not appreciated or recognized enough. So it's a good thing that there's this particular day that has been set aside. And if you look at it, as lately, it's getting a lot of recognition. The day is becoming bigger. The celebration is getting, more intense, actually.
Yeah, it's very true. But, sometimes I get jealous, as a man, because we find that women celebrate
There's International Men's Day, something like that.
There's International Men's Day, but that's just once in a year. For
How about Women's Day? It's only once.
For women, it happens like 50 times in a year. You just wonder. Every other day is either a Mother's Day or a Women's Day, and all that.
Yeah, maybe it's because of the marginalization women suffer. So maybe, if they suffer so much marginalization in every other sector, let them be celebrated at least.
Marginalization
the story for another day.
Anyway,
all right.
Thank you for holding up.
Yeah. All right. Communities in 2 local government areas of Katsina State will soon get primary schools. This followed the recent visit to the community by Trust TV news crew, who reported the dire need for a primary school for their children to have access to education. The 2 villages have been without social amenities for over 2 decades after the return of democracy in Nigeria, despite their active participation in politics. Abdullah Yamadi completes the report.
At first, when Trust TV visited the area, children from the 2 communities were taking lessons in a makeshift classes, with residents calling on the relevant authorities to come to their aid.
Daga tun da aka kawo mu daga makuraɗiya abin da ya kawo yanzu mu ba mu amfana da komi ba.
Residents of the two communities of Wawiya and Walawal are suffering absence of social amenities, especially school, road, and water shortage. Residents of Wawiya and Walawal are lucky as the Katsina State Primary Education Board heeds to their calls.
Stand up. How are you?
At a visit to the area, the chairman Lawal Buhari Daura gave assurances that the board will construct classes and provide teachers.
You have seen the number of children that are here that are not going to the school, and all those who are fighting against children not going to school. It has to do with out of school children. We are always fighting on it, and that is why we are trying all those things. You can see even the class that they are in now is locally made, of which with time we are going to find a land for them, and I assure them, inshallah, we are going to construct a class for them.
Similarly, the senator representing Katsina North at the National Assembly, Ahmad Babaketa, is constructing a block of 2 classrooms for the villagers. This means the communities can now boast of having at least a primary school as dividend of democracy since its return in 1999.
godiya ga wannan gidan talabiji mai albarka wanda ya ziyarci garin Wawiya, Allah shi saka mai da alkhairi.
We sincerely appreciate this TV station for coming to our rescue, which, through your reportage, we are now considered for at least 1 primary school for our children. The number of school-aged children from these communities is unprecedented. We thank God. In the same vein, the construction of the primary school will greatly reduce the menace of out-of-school children bedeviling the state and the country as a whole. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
All right, well, quite an interesting one, isn't it? One of the major roles that the media, plays in our society, spotlighting and highlighting some of the areas of concern and challenge. And this is what we were just seeing, the response to that report. And now this community is about to have a school. I mean,
yes,
it's going to give a lift to children in those areas.
And thanks to the Trust TV crew that went to that place. But you wonder, that area, don't they have a representative? Don't they have, a local government chairman, a councillor? Why did it take so long? The TV crew had to go there before, an official visited.
Certainly, Stella, all the talks about ungoverned spaces, there are places that are literally deserted. Not that they don't have local, but to be honest,
when I hear ungoverned spaces, I think of where insurgents have taken over, not a community that
in communities like that. I mean, those are the communities. Those are the communities that are prone to the attacks, to bandits invading and all that. And, it doesn't matter whether you actually have local government chairman or the other or not, because the fact is, the local government chairman, what can they really do right now with the way they have been
and the way the allocation comes and all of that?
So what can they really do? And for the lawmakers, maybe House of Reps or House Senate, I mean, some of them, we all know that they are not really doing the bidding.
But I just wonder how people in certain areas will feel. I mean, you're part of a state, but you don't feel the presence of the state government or anything in your area. That must be very tough.
Which is why we need to install a government, a people. We need to elect leaders that actually are interested in serving the people
and empowering the local government more. The local government, because look at that community. It's the local government that can easily identify the problem and try to solve it.
Hopefully now that there's respite for the people, we hope that.
And I hope this respite is not just coming because there's another election coming on Saturday.
Well, your guess is as good as mine, because we've had a lot of stories lately about government doing things.
In fact, I think we're going to talk about that during the newspaper review. I've seen so much.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at some more stories. Motorists in Abuja are groaning over recurring fuel shortage as queue resurfaced again in the nation's capital. Kabir Lawal reports that the queues are obstructing flow of traffic on the roads. Take a look.
Fuel queues are motorist nightmares. Motorists spend hours at filling stations to buy fuel. Others who could not spare time buy from black marketers at prohibitive prices. Some Abuja residents expressed worry that fuel shortage has been a recurring problem that the authorities have failed to address. Some of the commercial drivers further told Trust TV News that they spent the night at the filling station to enable them get the fuel, a situation they described as unfortunate.
I spent no less than 3 hours. Not only that, yesterday, I slept in the filling station yesterday at UC2. I did not get the fuel. They say, after everything, they say they have closed. So all of us will have to sleep that place. So one of my friends coming that this morning, these people are selling. So that's why I come here. I've stayed up to 3 hours now. I've never seen food.
It's a queue. It's too much. And we don't have cash to buy fuel. Then we went there for us to use our card. Even the queue of the POS is too much. We can't afford it. Even the country is getting terrible. It's getting out of hand, honestly. Our federal government should know what to do about it. But we, the poor masses, we are suffering. We can't even bear it.
I came all the way from Oyo State down to Abuja here, where we are finding it not easy. Like, day before yesterday, when I left Oyo State, we are buying at the rate of 250 per liter. And now, some places here in Abuja, they say 250, 270. It's only places like Rano or some other places that will say cheaper. And the queue is much. And the stress is much. Even if you want to pay through your ATM card, sometimes it will be declined.
Man, it's very bad. As you can see right now, I'm at Rano, Taco, trying to get fuel. I just got here now. What I intend doing is to act as if I want to service my car so I can gain access to get the fuel. If you go in, you have to queue first for the fuel. When you get your turn, then you queue to use the ATM card, to use your POS, because there's no cash anywhere.
Passengers also complained that the scarcity has made transport fares to go up, making life unbearable for them.
It's not like something is reducing, like the means of transportation. CQ now, fuel, and you don't expect transport to be easy, like maybe affordable. It's still the normal price, rather it's even shooting.
They want the government to make petroleum products available to cushion the hardship being experienced by people. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Kabir Lawal, for that report. Ayuba, when is this fuel queue going to disappear?
You know, the challenge now is that it's a twofold problem we're dealing with. Having the fuel is one thing, buying the fuel is another.
Yeah.
So now you find situations where people go to the filling stations and to get the fuel is a problem. You could see that there's fuel in the station, but to pay for the fuel is a big problem. You find stations, you know, having only one POS machine paying for the product.
Yeah.
And then these are stations that on a normal day have POS in abundance. They have POS for virtually every pumping point.
So why do you think they will be hoarding the POS machines?
I actually don't understand why.
Because I remember there was this story that the Daily Trust newspaper did about a week ago. It says how people with cash are kings at the petrol station. So when you come in and you're carrying cash, they attend to you before somebody who says, I want to do a transfer or I want to use my card.
So after queuing up to pay for the fuel,
for the product,
at the POS, you now come back and start queuing up to get the fuel.
Just imagine.
So that's where we are right now.
Just look at the man hours that are being wasted.
Exactly. So it's crazy now. I don't know where we're heading with all this. This has lingered for far too long, and I think something just needs to be done.
We don't need quick fix solutions to this thing. You remember before the presidential election, the INEC chairman observed that if the lack of petrol could affect it, and then we now saw petrol at the stations, and then now this. So does it mean that we have to just bring a quick fix solution to a problem and we just go back to wherever we were before?
Knows? It looks like fuel is now becoming epileptic, just like our power supply. You know.
Where do we go from?
You get fuel 2 days, it's available. The next 2 days, you just can't find it.
Anyway, we'll go for a very short break now. When we return, we'll look at what the newspapers are saying. Please stay.
Here at Media Trust Group, we're celebrating women's gargantuan efforts towards making the world a better and safer place to live in for all.
We acknowledge and appreciate the fact that women are excellent,
resilient, courageous,
elegant,
creative, passionate,
dedicated,
and extraordinary multitaskers.
As a media group, we remain strongly committed to gender inclusion and diversity. And we do this because
this is the right thing to do.
So please, join us in honoring and celebrating all the amazing women across the world on this International Women's Day.
From all of us at Daily Trust,
Trust TV, Armenia, and all other Media Trust brands,
we say Happy Women's Day!
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130.
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Already, if you look at English squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
situation where you find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Time to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. And we have the former Director of News, Voice of Nigeria, Ben Sherman, with us in the studio to give perspectives to some of the stories. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure as usual. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, we'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story on Daily Trust newspaper this morning. It says, "We didn't direct banks to disburse old notes," says CBN. It has the riders that says, "More banks pay old currency. Business outlets reject notes. Direct Apex Bank to obey Supreme Court order," Buhari urged. You would find all the details on page 4. Now, above the lead story, presidential poll, Tinubu, Atiku, Obi assemble legal teams on page 10. Over 200 cyber attacks blocked during February 25 elections, Galaxy backbone. You'd find out on page 6. International Women's Day special publication on page 17 and 32. You take a look at all the Daily Trust newspaper has for women on this special day. Now, below the lead story, elder statesman Musawa dies in Kaduna. Muslim leaders set agenda for Tinubu. 8 months pregnant Abuja woman gang raped. You'd find that on page 12. The pictorial there shows you customers waiting to withdraw cash at a bank in Anopaja in Lagos yesterday. Now, the story below there says, "Governors in last-minute push woo voters with incentives. Buni Inua splash 1 billion naira on teachers, business groups. Sanwo-Olu releases impounded vehicles free of charge." Now, these were the things that we were talking about earlier today, but we'll take a look at that much later. That's that for the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, now let's look at the Blueprint newspaper. It has a late story that says, "As Atiku Obi challenge February 25th polls results, Tinubu prepares defense." All right, this apparently is yesterday's newspaper. We'll now go to the Punch newspaper. Let's take a look at the Punch. The Punch newspaper has a lead story that says, "Fuel stations, others reject old naira, banks ration cash." And then we have a first rider, "Accepting old 500 naira, 1,000 naira will hamper business, says retailers, others." Then the second rider, "CBN adamant refuses to direct banks to obey Apex Court judgment." And beneath that, we have Lagos Kanu get lion's share as local governments share 2 trillion naira. We also have fuel scarcity to linger till after elections. This is coming from the marketers. And just by the masthead, we have NNPP kick as police bar dogs from polling booths. And above the masthead, aviation fuel hits 840 naira. Airlines predict flight delays. Over 200 cyber attacks blocked during presidential poll, says the federal government. We also have Beaver's data intact. INEC tells court parties. These are the major stories on the Punch newspaper for today.
All right. Now, on the Nation newspaper, we have the lead story says, INEC, reset of Beavers a must for governorship poll. Court decides today on LP's legal battle with election agency. Then above the masthead, APC supporters march for democracy. Alake insists poll credible. Transform Nigeria. NSCIA tells Tinubu victory well deserved. Sanwo-Olu takes campaign to market. Makinde engages clerics, canvasses peaceful poll. You have also banks pay old naira notes to customers with a rider that says traders reject old currencies, AGF, MAM, over Supreme Court judgment. Now, below the lead story, Daniel Jimo Bamidele, 98 senators-elect get certificate of return. These are the main stories on the Nation newspaper.
Now let's take a look at the News Direct newspaper. We have the headline that says, rejection of polls. Tough battle before tribunal as APC appoints 13 sons to defend Tinubu. And then the first rider, Tinubu asks court to access sensitive materials for defense. We also have a rider that says, I refuse to congratulate Tinubu because election was grossly flawed, contentious. This is coming from Konkoso, the candidate of the NNPP. And beneath that we have, this comes as INEC releases full list of members elect of 10th NAS. We also have customs unravel over 600 vehicles awaiting forged clearing process in Benin Republic. Beneath that, someone who takes campaign to markets assures Igbo traders of safety. We also have Century Energy Partners Energy Link for installation management of OML-18 infrastructure. And beneath that, Nollywood actor Fadeyi Oloro is dead. And above the masthead, Ganduje pardons 12 inmates on death row. Ogun teachers endorse Abiodun for second term. We also have POS operator arraigned for alleged 891,000 fraud. These are the major stories on the News Direct for today.
All right, now let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper this morning. On the lead story, 3 days to governorship polls. Governors tighten news on opposition. You have also, above the masthead, why I turned down NNPP senatorial seat, says Shekarau. INEC drops Dogua from election winners list. You also have, below the masthead, fuel scarcity, marketers disagree on uniform petrol pricing. Tinubu seeks tribunal order to inspect election materials. Tackle economy, security challenges, NSCIA urges Tinubu. NNPCL moves machines to Nasarawa ahead of March 21 drilling date. 10th National Assembly won't be executive's rubber stamp. Now, these are the main stories on the Leadership newspaper.
Now, over now to This Day newspaper. It has a lead story that says, Appeal Court rules today on INEC's request to vary order permitting PDP LP to inspect poll materials. And the first rider, Tinubu seeks order to inspect election materials. Whereas PDP raises the alarm over alleged plan to destroy evidence of rigging. Opposition parties insist reconfiguration of beavers will tamper with evidence. And above that, we have Chatham House, Nigeria's presidential election not conducted in line with INEC's guidelines. And just above the masthead, we have pro-Atiku Tinubu groups clash over poll results at INEC office. We also have polls. We're not in alliance with any political party, Labour Party declares. And the first rider, Rivers chapter defies order, endorses PDP. NWC dissolves state executive. These are the major stories on This Day.
All right, now on the Business Day newspaper, which has about one major lead story, that's the one talking about IWD, says Nigerian women eye bigger share of tech space, talking about the International Women's Day. Well, that's that for the newspapers that we have this morning. We'll take your perspectives now, and Ben Sherman is right here with us. Thank you again for joining.
Thank you very much.
Well, a lot of interesting stories this morning on the front pages of our newspapers. Let's start with the one that talks about the last-minute push by governors ahead of the governorship election on Saturday. We are seeing that citizens are now brides, sort of, because we've seen states now deciding to, release impounded vehicles for free. Now, these are vehicles that were impounded once upon a time, and all sorts of, things just to gladden the hearts of voters. We've seen even some of the candidates go to the markets. Ordinarily, these are people that wouldn't do so. We heard stories about payment of pensions in some instances. And in Gombe State, Inua splashed 1 billion naira on teachers, and the rest of them. Some things just wait for elections to come, isn't it?
In Benue, we will have Autumn lifting the ban on motorcycles. In Kano, we have Ganduje pardoning 12 inmates. Yeah, I mean, you know.
In the midst of that, you go to Katsina, some PAMSEC, some directors have been sacked. Oh, what anti-party activities? This anticlimax. Is it because Masari is leaving office? But he should also know that someone is gunning for that office, probably in APC. But having said so, you see, time has passed when indeed governors would just you just go do one campaign in one central place and go sit down. When Obi felt he should campaign in Lagos, he didn't just do that in TBS. He started going into the markets, and you could see street by street kind of a thing, and others started adopting it. Now, you can see someone who in Lagos is adopting that, because the figures, Lagos is a state of interest. If Peter Obi won in Lagos, it says a lot concerning the gubernatorial that is coming on board. And that's why everything that must be done to win by every party has to be there. I can also see some people in Lagos, they are busy trying to castigate, put the gubernatorial candidate of Labour in Lagos in a very bad light. I think that is taken too much to a very far extreme. And in Kaduna, you could see, other parties are saying, look, there has to be an alliance. This issue of Muslim ticket is still boiling, pursuing APC there. How will it be done there? PDP and Labour, other parties, Zenith party, all are saying, can we go for PDP, NNPP, all the same. Do you know that, just a moment, let me learn. In other words, the feeling that if they form a kind of a group, they are most likely to have someone they will want. But APC is also saying they are a force to be reckoned with. So let's see, again, Kaduna is a state of interest. And many other, like Kano again, is another state of interest. Look at the shakers and movers of the political terrain in Kano. So it's another state of interest. Kwankwaso is there, and of course you having gubernatorial candidates that none is a pushover. Where will it go to? And we had Adodogwa, who indeed was also very vibrant, but you can see what is happening. Even when others were receiving their certificates of return, his name was conspicuously missing. Now, the rec there simply said, look, that election of Adodogwa, that he declared it under duress. That's what INEC is also saying. And so, that being the case, then there has to be a rework, probably. And so, a whole lot of things. And that's why these governors are now coming out with incentives. But in this dying minute, we want a governor who will wake up to say, see, vote me in.
Well,
we'll
Mr.
give
Sherman,
local governments their autonomy financially.
Mr. Sherman,
yes.
You see, something that a lot of people are wondering is, if, for instance, you put a ban on motorcycles, for instance, it would be imagined that you had a reason for banning the activities of motorcyclists. So lifting that ban 3 days to an election, is it that the reason for which it was banned in the first place does no longer exist, or what?
I think to a large extent or a larger extent, yes. Why do I say so? If you look at when there were these either communal attacks, or you had herders, farmers attacks, or you had Boko Haram, ISWAP attacks, motorcycle was always the commonest thing. Each time there were even kidnapping, before they start negotiation, they say, bring food to feed the victims, also include motorcycles. So that tells you motorcycle became a thing, a commodity that was needed to do something badly. But the governors decided to ban them. If banning them, and they saw that there's a small respite, and Stella will agree, you agree with me that at least kidnapping in the last
all right, they saw this respite 3 days to
gone down.
Okay, they saw this respite 3 days to the next election.
It's still an attempt to woo. I mean, to back this and bearing in mind that remember in Kaduna State, Kaura Federal Constituency, an Okada man
do you
defeated a sitting, a ranking house of.
So do you think that the outcome of the presidential and national assembly elections has something to do with the new dimension of the campaigns, the narrative, or kind of tightening of the grip on, you know, the seats that right now, going by the way the campaigns are going now?
You see, if just look at the case with Nasarawa State, senators coming from SDP, the chairman defeated decisively before his very eyes. Now, governors that, you know, you can call emperors in their states have been defeated. You know, of course, they begin to wonder, where is the game plan? And when the youths are now feeling, look, we are in charge, we must decide where and who goes where. I think it gives a lot of concern to these governors who indeed are now, they now realize that they've been living, so in your view, in some fool's paradise.
So in your view, these new attempts and new style of campaigns and all this release of you know, prisoners, grants and all of that, do you think it's going to have any positive impact? Do you think it's going to change the way the voters are going to perform during the governorship?
You see, during this election, I still met some people who would say, look, if I'm giving something, I'll collect and I'll vote for whoever gives me something. Why? Because even when you call ideal election, when you vote them in, it is the end. Look at those who are given some things. I mean, people came to receive letters of return yesterday. Some are in Abuja here to receive theirs. But those who slept overnight, who are on motorcycles, who are campaigning, given some kind of things to behave abnormally, they are not in hotels today with those elected. It is bye-bye for them. And that's why sometimes when you have these vanguards for one politician, another one for the opponent, and when finally you've used them, you've dumped them, in the end you seclude yourself, you are in Abuja, you change your phone numbers, you no longer pick their calls, and they become a problem not just to you, they become a problem to society. And so that's why some people feel, okay, if you are giving me, just give me my own now, because I fear the future, because I'm not sure I'll see you again. So when you release vehicles, you release prisoners, you're paying pension, you're paying teachers, why was it that you waited to the 11th hour?
But shouldn't voters be able to see through these kind of things, that, okay, all this is just because you want our votes at this time, not necessarily because you care about us and you want to do these things for us?
Stella, I know some people in Kaduna State. Father sacked, mother sacked, children, some that were working, sacked, those in school. I know of a family, I can take you there. You see, when you increased a kind of school fees to one high heavens, the children became withdrawn. A family is living from goodwill. You dash them today, dash them tomorrow. Truly, I know families like that. Now, you're talking of someone going to say, vote for me. I'll give you just 3 modules of maize. Stella, I tell you, they will collect. Things are bad. I'm telling you, things are bad.
All right. Now, all of this is happening. Few days to the governorship election. We have cases in court. Albeit today, we are expecting to, you know, for the Supreme Court to rule on some of the issues, particularly as regards the beavers and, you know, the cases of the opposition, the PDP and LP, who rejected the outcome of the election and all that. There are those who are seeing a likelihood of a postponement of the governorship election, as these litigations could have an impact on the governorship elections. What do you make of this?
You see, in 1999, court cases were little. There were not many. 2003, they became more. In that order. But the days of Yaradua, when Yaradua came and said, look, the process that brought me on board, I don't agree with it. You know, court cases started going down. But today we are seeing an avalanche of court cases. And it makes some people to smile to the banks, the senior advocates. You can imagine just going for, in fact, collecting a form alone. How much is it? Consultation alone, how much is it? Now appearances, how much is it? And look, before I even continue, go and find out also those who worked in various chambers, if they are enjoying from these huge monies. You see that they are just getting some very little things for a lot of research work they put on ground for cases to be won. So we are into a time where the judiciary, when I talk of the judiciary, the lawyers, you know, those at the bar, not the bench this time. Well, the bench might even, benefit from it. But in all, the judiciary, we still believe, should hold its head very high at that scale where justice should not be tilted either left or right, or remaining as if nothing has happened should not just be it. And when they said we're going to clean up the system, and some people are saying, oh boy, if you clean up the system, what happens to the gubernatorial? Won't we postpone it? INEC is saying they will not postpone. It's like buying a new phone, buying a new computer. All the systems, or it's almost crashing, it's filled up, you have to evacuate and save somewhere before you do those evacuations. But again, are we saying that beavers, they were so costly to the extent that, in every unit you didn't envisage that you can have maybe one that you save for the rainy day like today? I think that
as it stands, the INEC is saying that data on the beavers have been saved at the back-end server.
So if it is so, we shouldn't have some
But
fears.
we have a situation that virtually all the parties, including the winner of the election, the APC, is also requesting for access to the data on the beavers and all that. So that's a huge one, and whether or not we're able to manage it in the coming days, it remains to be seen.
Absolutely, yes. But if INEC says they are going to evacuate, or they've evacuated and saved in some subwares or somewhere that we don't know, so we take it, this thing about the cloud and all that, people will save all sorts of things, and by the time you click, it comes on board.
What some of the lawyers are arguing is that the back-end server that INEC is talking about does not carry all the information on the beavers that is required for them to make their case in court.
That's why
to defend their case.
That's why in the court they now say, come, whoever alleges has the honors to prove. If you said it's not there and they say it's there, okay, let's begin to see. Court, I know you said it is there, show us, and the court will just make sure that they show the world.
Mr. Schumann, it appears as if the issue of suspicion between the political parties, the politicians, and then INEC, the issue of suspicion is playing a huge role in this particular election. So much so that anything INEC says or puts forward, the political parties, So how do we get out of
trust
this
issue?
There's the trust issue.
When you doubt everything, that is always the issue. And that issue of trust, especially when it had to do with Arif, beavers, look, when you vote, it's going to pass on to a system that everybody will see, and it didn't happen that way. That created room for suspicion. And I pray that we don't just rock the boat because of this election. We should be able, as people of conscience, as people, the religious people, as we think we all are, we cannot be taking Holy Communion from the same source or going to see Imam from the same mosque, and in the end, as soon as we leave the gates of places of worship, we are at each other's throats. I think issue of suspicion, trust, should just come to bear. And INEC too try to be as open as possible. If there is a let-down procedure from 1 to 10, okay, if you start from 1, let us know how you reach 4 and 5. Let us not just see 3 and the next thing we see 6. Let us know the processes. It's like cooking, so that you start from washing the pot up to when every meal is being served and the table is clean, so that everybody gets satisfied. That logic will kind of bring some confidence building, and of course we also expect that NOA, we expect that people who indeed some civil society organizations who indeed also believe in a process should also be doing some campaign positively in terms of awareness. That trust, let us begin to think about it.
Do you think that there's any, going into the governorship and state assemblies election, is there anything that INEC can do better to reduce the number of litigations that are likely to follow? Because if you find that the electoral law, like others have said, gives INEC some powers to review, results from different places within 7 days and address some of the issues. But in this case, we've seen from the presidential that INEC just simply refers everyone aggrieved to the court. And at the end of the day, you really can't tell how many people would have issues with the elections. And if that happens, it's like everyone else is going to the court. Can the courts really handle the number of cases that are likely to follow?
More so when there is time, some cases are time barred, a kind of. You see, just like Mao Hoabunwa in Abia State, he said, look, elections for some senatorial areas, some local governments would take place in during this, for the future. But again, Uzokalu has already been declared, according to him, that INEC did not do the election. You said, okay, we've halted elections here. For the future, we'll do it this way. But how come Uzokalu is a kind of declared? And that's where some people will begin to question INEC. If you say the processes involved, once you come via beavers, yes, your fingerprint, yes, your face, all captured, and elections done, they are entered into papers. These are procedures, and they are legally provided. And once done, okay, every agent is there. Snap a photograph, snap this, a copy is given to you, you sign, you hold on to it. By the time you collecting, even agents will begin to show, yes, in my party got this, where I was the agent. In that other place, every party will just show, so that in the end, everything is brought bare. 2 + 2 has become 4, so that people will just accept. But we shouldn't have where 2 + 2 is giving us 6. So how do we explain that? So INEC must come out clean, so that these litigations, even against INEC, I'm wondering how they're going to pay too, because they also need a team of lawyers, not just lawyers, seasoned lawyers, senior advocates of Nigeria, because political parties are having theirs, and they also have to have theirs, because when INEC is sued, of course, they have to pay lawyers. Consultation, just name it, not just those they have in INEC.
Which ends up adding to how much we spend on election in Nigeria. But before you go, I would like us to talk about the lead story of the Daily Trust. We didn't direct banks to disburse old notes. This is coming from the CBN, and this is coming almost about 5 days since the ruling by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
What's the way forward?
Usually you hear of, I have not received the true certified copy of this judgment. So if you say, I had it on TV, I saw it on newspaper, they'll say, I need to see that judgment as it is passed. so that I see the nitty-gritties, so that I don't also implement what was not given as a cry by those who sued the CBN. So, but again, we shouldn't be having two governments in one country. Supreme Court has ruled, do this. I believe it should have been within 24 hours. That judgment is given to CBN. So who is delaying? And again, if CBN is feeling that it is on top of this of the Supreme Court, then it gives a lot room for concern. That you now go to the market, money that is legal tender, traders are refusing, and in some cases, I heard in along this popular market, airport road here in Abuja, some people will receive old notes on grounds that you're going to pay them almost double. If this item is 200 naira, then you pay them 400 naira because you have old notes. And so a whole lot of things.
Aside from that, the cash crunch also having impact on energy. Petroleum fuel stations are rejecting the use of ATMs in some instances. They're insisting on cash. Where would the people get the cash? And if for those who have managed to bring out the POS, they are making people to queue up to pay for the product, where they can actually have more POS.
It's a very big problem. Now, you want to take fuel. He wants to sell, you want to buy. But somewhere along the line, there is communication breakdown via do I call them the server? The banks are not releasing the money. And sometimes if you even go buy some things in the market, yes, they have agreed. Go to some eateries, even in village, GSM village. What happens is, the moment you reach there, you tell them how much the worth of food you eat. Maybe 1,000, 1,005. They say this is the account number. It's now you send the money to that account. They keep on waiting. You are waiting. Nobody is serving you food. Okay, when they receive an alert, is then they serve you food. So we shouldn't be having it that way. That is affecting the informal sector of the economy so terribly, so terribly.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to interject there. We have to go at this point. Thank you for coming on Daybreak and sharing with us your perspectives on some of the stories today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a short break now, and then when we return, Daybreak will continue. Join us again.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Here at Media Trust Group, we're celebrating women's gargantuan efforts towards making the world a better and safer place to live in for all.
We acknowledge and appreciate the fact that women are excellent,
resilient, courageous,
elegant, creative, passionate, dedicated,
and extraordinary multitaskers.
As a media group, we remain strongly committed to gender inclusion and diversity. And we do this because
this is the right thing to do.
So please join us in honoring and celebrating all the amazing women across the world on this International Women's Day.
From all of us at Daily Trust, Trust TV, Armenia, and all other Media Trust brands,
We say Happy Women's Day.
thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak on Trust TV. Top of the hour now. The show is an hour already. Now let's take a look at the headlines again. Ganduje pardons 12 inmates sentenced to death.
Why I'm not part of team defending Tinubu's victory in court. Keyamo.
Court of Appeal to rule on INEC, Peter Obi's case on Wednesday.
Now let's take a look at the details. Kano State Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has pardoned 12 inmates on death row and commuted the death sentences of 6 others to life imprisonment. The governor had, in an interview with Trust TV in 2021, revealed that governors were afraid of signing death warrants of convicts because they did not want to order the execution and later find out the person did not deserve to die. A statement on Tuesday by the spokesman of the Kano Command of the Nigeria Correctional Service, Misbah Lawan Nasara, said the governor also pardoned 4 male inmates with long-term sentences based on their good behavior and industry, as recommended by the service. The governor also gave 5,000 naira fare to each of the released inmates to enable them reunite with their families. According to the statement, some of the pardoned inmates have spent 25 years awaiting execution.
Festus Keyamo, a senior advocate of Nigeria, SAN, has explained his absence from the legal team defending Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect, in court. The Independent National Electoral Commission had declared Tinubu winner of the February 25 presidential election, but his major rivals in the exercise headed for the court to challenge his victory. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party and Peter Obi of the Labour Party are both claiming to have won the election, and they have hired lawyers to prove their case in court. On Tuesday morning, the lists of Tinubu's 48-man legal counsel went viral on social media. The ruling All Progressives Congress also released a 12-man list of senior lawyers to defend Tinubu.
Now, the Court of Appeal in Abuja has slated Wednesday, March 8th, to rule on the application of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to be allowed to reconfigure the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, it used for the presidential election. A 3-member panel led by Justice Joseph Ike also adjourned to rule on the application filed by the Labour Party and its candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, to be allowed to conduct a physical inspection of all the BVAS that were used for the poll. Onyechi Ikpeazu, counsel to Obi, says the essence of the application was to enable them to extract data embedded in the BVAS, which represents the actual results from the polling unit. Ikpeazu prayed the court to allow them to conduct a physical inspection of all the BVAS that were used for the presidential election, as this is to ensure that the evidence is preserved before the BVAS are reconfigured by INEC. He added that if they are wiped out, it will affect the substance of the case.
All right, now let's take a look at a package this morning. Motorists in Abuja are groaning over recurring fuel shortage as queues resurfaced again in the nation's capital. Kabir Lawal reports that the queues are obstructing flow of traffic on the roads. Take a look.
Fuel queues are motorist nightmares. Motorists spend hours at filling stations to buy fuel. Others who could not spare time buy from black marketers at prohibitive prices. Some Abuja residents expressed worry that fuel shortage has been a recurring problem that the authorities have failed to address. Some of the commercial drivers further told Trust TV News that they spent the night at the filling station to enable them get the fuel, a situation they described as unfortunate.
I spent no less than 3 hours. Not only that, yesterday, I slept in the police station yesterday at 2. I did not get the fuel. They say after everything they say they have closed. So all of us will have to sleep that place. So one of my friends coming that this morning these people are selling. So that's why I come here. I've stayed up to 3 hours now. I've never seen food.
It's a queue. It's too much, and we don't have cash to buy fuel. Then we went there for us to use our card. Even the queue of the POS is too much. We can't afford it. Even the country is getting terrible. It's getting out of hand, honestly. Our federal government should know what to do about it. But we, the poor masses, we are suffering. We can't even bear it.
I came all the way from Oyo State down to Abuja here, where we are finding it not easy. Like, day before yesterday, when I left Oyo State, we were buying at the rate of 250 per liter. And now, some places here in Abuja, they say 250, 270. It's only places like Rano or some other places that will see cheaper. And the queue is much. And the stress is much. Even if you want to pay through your ATM card, sometimes it will be declined.
Man, it's very bad. As you can see right now, I'm at Rano, Taco, trying to get fuel. I just got here now. What I intend doing is to act as if I want to service my car so I can gain access to get the fuel. If you go in, you have to queue first for the fuel. When you now get your turn, you now queue to use the ATM card, to use your POS, because there's no cash anywhere.
Passengers also complain that the scarcity has made transport fares to go up, making life unbearable for them.
It's not like something is reducing, like the means of transportation. CQ now, fuel, and you don't expect transport to be easy, like maybe affordable. It's still the normal price, rather it's even shooting.
They want the government to make petroleum products available to cushion the hardship being experienced by people. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Kabir Lawal, for that report. We'll now go for a very short break. When we return, we're going to the discussion of the day. Please stay.
That's great.
Trust Group, we're celebrating women's gargantuan efforts towards making the world a better and safer place to live in for all.
We acknowledge and appreciate the fact that women are excellent,
resilient, courageous, elegant,
creative, passionate, dedicated,
and extraordinary multitaskers.
As a media group, we remain strongly committed to gender inclusion and diversity. And we do this because
this is the right thing to do.
So please, join us in honoring and celebrating all the amazing women across the world on this International Women's Day.
From all of us at Daily Trust, Trust TV,
Armenia, and all other media trust brands,
we say Happy Women's Day.
All right, welcome back. It's no longer news that today is the International Women's Day and everyone is celebrating, including the Media Trust Group. Now, the 2023 International Women's Day is celebrated every March 8 in honor of women's contribution to society, economy, culture, and politics. It's also an occasion to consider the steps taken towards achieving gender equality in all spheres of life and the work that remains to be done. The 2023 day with the theme Digital Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality points that women make up only 22% of artificial intelligence workers globally. We have in the studio to discuss this the President Association of Women Town Planners, Mrs. Yinka Bello. You're welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
We also have an entrepreneur and politician, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay.
Well,
happy International Women's Day to
International
Happy
Women's Day.
International Day too as well.
And I can see the touch of purple on your outfit.
Absolutely.
And yours too. Very colorful.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's a special day indeed. As a he for she, let me go first with the questioning. A lot really has happened in the past few years as far as women inclusion and women's participation in all spheres of our national life. Let me start with political issues. We've seen a decline, however, between the number of women that participated in the 2019 election and that of the 2023 presidential election in terms of the number of female candidates aspiring for positions and all that. And eventually, in the outcome of the 2023 elections, we've seen further that I think, for instance, the senators, for the women that were in the seat, I think virtually all of them are now returning to the Senate. How does that make you feel? Is that a setback?
It's a setback, and I'm not surprised because each progress draws equivalent measure of backlash. So the more we are progressing, the more backlash we are getting. And the backlash, manifests in different ways and impacts on how much women participate in politics. It is not for lack of effort, not at all, because the primaries showed that there were more women coming out for positions, but the insecurity in most of the men in politics would not, provide for us an enabling environment for women to emerge. And so there were very vicious efforts within parties to wriggle out women on the perception that women don't have enough resources to support the kind of work that goes on in politics. And so men who show, the affluence part of themselves much more than women do, even though I understand sometimes they are borrowing Land Cruisers and G-Wagons to move around. We will catch up because we now know that those things happen. But those are the kind of things that, caused parties to grow cold feet, when it came to presenting women as candidates. They needed candidates with what they call adequate resources, to fuel the campaign and elections and post-elections because of the legal tribunal issues that will ensue afterward. they have to be sure that candidates have the resources. What they are not thinking about is pulling those resources together to support women's participation. You know, because there is nothing wrong with telling the men, yes, we know you got the money, but we have quality here. Can we put down some
But we've seen
percentage?
special concessions for women in terms
Free
of
forms.
buying, the forms.
That is a tip of the iceberg. Everybody talks about that.
Okay, Mrs. Bello. My first question is, why is it that we're still here? Every year, March 8th, we talk about Women's Day. We celebrate. We have talk shops. There's a lot of talks. There's a lot of, people, even the men, they come there and make promises. Why are we still here? Because in this particular election, in the presidential election, for instance, we had just one woman, and I don't hear her name be mentioned among the front runners. Why are we still here?
I think basically what is still affecting us is these cultural norms that we have, that is still existing. We're living in an area that the men are seen to be the head, and then women are supposed to be submissive. So naturally there's this carryover of this mentality, even for those that are still educated. So women are constantly having those challenges, meeting up. And some cultures don't even think that a woman is, the voices of the women are not loud. They cannot talk to them, they cannot take instructions from them. So even when women have their ideas about things, they don't think it can work. And just like she mentioned, resources for us are basically one of the challenges. The more funds, resources you have in your hands, the more you can achieve a lot of things. And that resources is something we are not having access to. And that is what is happening in a political atmosphere.
Do you think there's a deliberate attempt by, to just keep women in a certain space? Do you think so?
Absolutely, I think so. Because there should be a standard whereby a certain percentage of whatever position should be given to women, and it should not even be contested. But even for the ones that they tell us that no, we are going to give the women, the men are also, canvassing for the same thing.
Exactly.
They are canvassing
during
the same
primaries,
thing.
There was somebody canvassing for the women's seat in either Adama or Taraba State.
So
the women.
We have seen some states also where a man is the commissioner for women affairs.
It has happened in Niger State before.
And the beauty about this is women they have a lot of creative ideas. We have the potential to manage, and in managing, you will manage not only the resources that will help the society itself, but even human resources management. And unfortunately, the other gender parts they're a bit reserved in giving us that opportunity to also manage the human aspect of these resources.
Okay.
Now, like I said, it's all still within this our cultural norm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask: do you think there's anything peculiar about the 2023 elections in terms of female participation in politics? Is there anything different? Why have we seen the kind of decline that we've seen? Is it violence? What exactly are some of the factors that have perhaps led to this decline?
I think that, today is digital.
Yeah, digital.
We can't underplay the role of the digital era in the women's participation in politics. It means that the people who have the resources have access to the most sophisticated ICTs and can employ experts in that field. I haven't seen ICT deployed anywhere in politics like it was in these 2023 elections, especially towards the presidential elections. We saw the measure of online propaganda, the video editing, all sorts of cut and paste things that were being forwarded. They had such gifted people that they must have paid astronomically for to carry out this job and sustain it all the way through. Every time you opened your internet, it was bombardment of one form of propaganda after the other. No wonder we didn't hear about our sister much, who was just the single female candidate. Because it takes a lot of resources to put the ICTs in place, to put a whole hall filled up with experts who are busy doing
media influencers.
So for me, that was the influencers, but also the creators of the content, because most of those contents were not facts. Some of them were just fictitious, but they were pushed into the public space as though they were the truth. If the woman had the capacity to pull that kind of resource together, the thing would have been different. So for me, if there is anything unique about what has happened in this season, it has been the use of the ICTs. And so I think that today's celebration is really hitting the nail on the head, because we must begin to ensure that women have the capacity, that women have access to the infrastructure, that women have access to resources to be able to afford what their male counterparts were able to put together to run a successful campaign.
All right, Mrs. Bello, we should talk about resources, and it's huge. It's a huge component of the entire process. But where do we begin? Because even where you see women in business, most of them are in the small and medium scale businesses, which cannot really give them that kind of resources to actively participate and make a headway in politics. So where do we begin? Because you can't wait until during the election. You have to build. So how do we begin?
I think basically it starts from sensitization. We cannot, we need to talk more about getting more and more women, children, girls, more informed about the things that are happening. And this year's theme covers it all, the application of digital technology. And that is what is happening in the world now. 80% of people all over Nigeria, you see them with one form of digital technology, as small as smartphone. So the use of smartphone is one of the major things that can help us in sensitizing, and how we can do that through education. We should create platform whereby women and girls can have access to this information, because knowledge is power.
And I was also going to say, even when you say knowledge is power, it's not just about the women getting educated, but there are certain areas that we don't see a lot of women venturing into, like the ICT, that is a theme for this year.
And just imagine that we have the Android phone. You open your Facebook and 1,000 men are asking you, where are you located? You look beautiful. Absolutely. Can we be friends? When do I see you? Meanwhile, we can do much more than looking for dates on the phone.
Absolutely.
And so we need to begin to reconstruct how we engage with the new technologies in terms of communication. That has to be done. Let's know that when we are online, we are not there to look for dates. We are there for business. And so we can begin to look at the facilities that they provide and how we can best utilize them to our advantage in terms of pushing the envelope and in terms of occupying or reclaiming spaces.
Yes, and I also think why we need to start this early, we can go as to the to the basic, as going to the primary school, starting them young, sensitizing them, educating them. There are different platforms which you can use to even, not necessarily on-site education. If you see now these days, people go through Zoom virtually to educate. During the COVID time, a lot of people leveraged on the use of internet to achieve a lot of things. And if we women seize the opportunity by educating these young ones, especially the females, right from primary and secondary school, sometimes it doesn't even have to be. It can be a virtual meeting. It can be through webinar where they can have some of this sensitization information of what they can do in the society as a whole. themselves.
Well, you know, before you even get to what these women can do as in the society, there's a UN report yesterday that came out yesterday that said that Nigeria is among the 12 countries that are hard hit by women, undernourished women. Girls and women between the ages of 19 and 49 are undernourished. So we're talking about people who don't even have enough food. They're not eating well. I think that should form the basis before we talk about education and every other thing. And now we're battling this.
I think that all these things are interconnected, and we don't have to do one before we do the other. We can do everything at the same time because of the intersectionalities that play out.
A hungry girl, does she want to go to school though?
She wants to go to school, and she can be fed that she's going to school, and while in school. That happened during our time, during the federal government colleges, where there were model schools. They did everything for us, and that's why I think people in our generation are pretty much like well-rounded in terms of education and skills and capacity and exposure, you know, and understanding even of the context of the nation. I think that we have enough resources to be able to take it all at the same time, and we must begin then to put pressure on the leadership to ensure that resources are allocated to the right things, for the right things to be done. This gender tracking of the budget, we need to scale it up to the finer details so that we ensure that women in their reproductive age, for goodness sake, is the statistic that you've given us, are well nourished. Because if in their reproductive age they are malnourished, then we are going to have other complications, you know, spiraling from there. So we have to look at it in an, in an interconnected manner.
Okay. Now, earlier on, you talked about young women, the use of social media and smartphones by young women, and all that. And I'm thinking to ask this: that in terms of self-awareness among these young women themselves, sometimes you find that they themselves do not see the tool that they have in their hands, the smartphones, as something that they can make something much more meaningful for themselves, rather than just posting pictures of them, showing off
selfies,
how beautiful they are, and the rest of them.
My new style.
I mean, exactly. So, I mean, they are basically just showing off themselves, and for the men, well, it's just an opportunity to get a date and the rest of them. So. Do these young women really understand? Are they that aware of themselves such that they actually can see the smartphones in their hands as something that they can make life much more meaningful for themselves beyond just, Well,
let me start by saying my sister, Mrs. Bello, was saying that we need to start educating these young women. It comes from there. She also mentioned the issue of socialization. Women have been objectified from birth. And so they grow up with this mentality, about let's make the men happy, let's show off, or, we are all supposed to look dressy and wear the best smiles, Hardly we are seeing selfies of people in the cockpit, they're trying to take off the plane, or in a boardroom governing over a meeting and so on. We need those selfies, but that comes with awareness creation. That comes with deconstructing what has been put in our heads while we were being brought up, and putting in place of that deliberately information, education, and capacity that enables us realize that we are much more than our physical bodies.
Absolutely.
We are spiritual, we have inner strength and energy, we have capacity to create and be innovative, and we can bring all of these on the table, and that can propel our development altogether in a much faster way. And we need to begin to make women feel like they are agents of change and not just beneficiaries or subjects. Let's do this for them, let's do that for them. We can do it together. I'm telling you that there are girls that you put in the classroom and give them one session on how to use the phone to send out adverts for fashion designers, for example. You'll be very surprised at what they can do with it. And so I think that we need to just start revisiting the way we are brought up, what we think of our bodies, the kind of targets and goals that we've been taught to achieve and begin to operate outside the box. You know, let's leave those straight jackets and sew our own jackets and move with them.
All right.
Point.
There's the issue of culture, and you have mentioned that. The culture, the African culture, Nigeria culture, we do know that there are some societies where the women are supposed to be seen, not heard. So there's this issue that is there. So it's underlying every other thing that you talk about on the surface. So how do you get to the root of this particular tackling the culture which has existed for so long and has formed how women are brought up, as it were, in most societies in Nigeria?
I think, you know, I heard when you made the statement about socialization and starting from the community level, but you also said we need to bring men on the table, you know, so that we can have these conversations. Because if the man is brought up and fueled to function in a particular way, and he's going to continually interact with women, and we don't deconstruct his own perception and upbringing, then we're still going to have a problem. Like in politics, I see many men who say, oh, I support the woman in politics. Oh, I would vote for a woman if she was a candidate. But you know what? His mates are going to tell him, oh, woman rapper, all you want to do is to support women. And, you know, so they call them names, they stigmatize them.
On that note, I would like to bring in Mrs. Bello. I think that one way they have criticized women is that when women talk about empowering women and making the lives of women different, they don't talk about it with the men in the room. They talk about it amongst themselves, forgetting that they need the men on the table to key into it for them to succeed. For instance, when the bills on the women bills that were killed on the National Assembly, we heard that the women, the person who brought the bill and the women did not lobby enough to get their male counterpart on board. When the men want these things, they lobby their men and the women.
You know, aside from women supporting women to achieve their aim, we should have the mindset of collaboration, because the truth is that we're in a society that consists of both, representation of the male and the female, and in as much as we agree on doing some certain things, we need their involvement. And this is where politics also comes in. Women need to understand how to play the politics. If we don't know how to play the politics and be diplomatic, most of the times we'll not get what we want. For instance, in our association, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, we have a couple of the women wing, that is association, the national body, Nigerian Institute of Town Planners. They have things that they want to do, but we felt that in our little way, we can go into intervention projects that can impact the national body and will give us a voice. And that's what we've been doing. And we are not doing it in isolation. How do we do it? The first person we have to consult will have to be the national president.
Who is a man?
Who is a man. We must get them to be on board. Let them know, see where we're going to, what is share our vision with them. And so we cannot do things in isolation. We must get them involved. Let them see what we have. And again, we must have something tangible to offer. Sometimes if you come, we present things to them like we're in competition with them, they might track it down. But when they see something tangible that we want to do for the society, I think it's not all of them that can reject our proposal. But at the same time, you see one or two people that will support us. So we need diplomacy. We need also to imbibe the act of politics. Yes.
Okay, another group very critical to this conversation is the religious leaders. So let's talk about the role of religious leaders in deconstructing some of the narratives and some of the ideas about women participating in other aspects of life in our country. What role can religious leaders play?
Plenty roles, because most of us are affiliated to one religion or the other, and especially women. If you go to places of worship, if you check your list, you're going to find women who are totally immersed in religious activities. And that is a very good platform to do the education, to begin to address the discriminatory practices. The challenge is, do these teachers themselves know what we are talking about? You know, that's a big issue. How are they interpreting the texts, the religious books? It's a big challenge. So there has to be a deliberate effort, also an investment in capacity building for religious leaders to understand the issues. There are religious leaders who would see a woman being battered on a daily basis and they will still tell her, no, you know, you have to be submissive. Like, to what point? It's just like saying women have not lobbied enough. To what point? Where is the yardstick for the measurement of lobby that we are expected to do? You know, so we need to get the religious leaders training tool altogether prepared. I don't think that we've done very well. Coming to think about this religious, a tool for training religious leaders. We need a group that will come up with that sort of tool, that will put them through the various components of women's lives and get them to relate them with the religious texts and let them not mix culture with religion anymore, because we see that happening over and over again.
Because there's a lot of narratives really that stem from the interpretation that religious leaders give to certain texts in scriptures, in religious books, you know, regarding the way women are expected to behave in a society and all that.
Yes, like the text can be interpreted in so many ways. Some of the ways is that women are meant to keep quiet and listen to what the men says, even in church. But I don't want to focus on what the Bible says or what the Quran says, but we have an opportunity of this religious institution to educate and leverage it. I discovered that it's a great platform. If you're a member of a church and your pastor is affiliated to a particular political individual, there's a tendency of encouraging the members of the congregation to be in support of the person you want. So it's a great platform that we need to explore, that can be deployed to sensitizing even the role of women and how they can impact the society.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we cannot go further because of time. We thank you for joining us on Daybreak and sharing your perspectives with us on this
Thank
subject.
you very much. And happy Women's Day to everyone once again.
Once again, yes. Our guest has been President, Association of Women Town Planners, Mrs. Yinka Bello, and also entrepreneur and politician, Mrs. Dorothy Nuhu. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a short breather. We are not done just yet. And when we return, we'll take a look at some other perspectives to the same issue. It's International Women's Day. Join us again.
it's good to see you.
Here at Media Trust Group, we're celebrating women's gargantuan efforts towards making the world a better and safer place to live in for all.
We acknowledge and appreciate the fact that women are excellent,
resilient, courageous,
elegant, creative, passionate, dedicated,
and extraordinary multitaskers.
As a media group, we remain strongly committed to gender, inclusion, and diversity. And we do this because
this is
the right thing to do.
So please join us in honoring and celebrating all the amazing women across the world on this International Women's Day.
From all of us at Daily Trust, Trust TV, Armenia, and all other Media Trust brands,
We say Happy Women's Day.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Daybreak this morning. Staying with the same subject of International Women's Day, we have entrepreneur, people and culture manager at Lofting. She's Mrs. Cynthia Mbakogu Uzomba, who will be talking to us more on this. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how today makes you feel. You know, a lot of men will say, well, women celebrate Women's Day almost 50 times in a year, and it's almost as if the world is around women. You know, women say women run the world and all that. How true is that really, anyways?
Well, so I mean, the role of women in the society cannot be overemphasized. I know a lot of people are they think we over celebrate ourselves, but first of all, how I feel absolutely great. I like that this is becoming a trend. I like that is something that we're having conversations that can enlighten people, that can enlighten the society, to help us understand and see the world from the female view, from the female perspective, because there's this popular saying also that is a man's world, right? But it's not only men that live in the world. We have other genders that live in the world. We have women as well as another gender that lives in the world, and of course you cannot talk about just one gender and then ignore completely the other gender, right? Because we are naturally, we are maternal, we are the ones that incubate, we are the ones that care, we are the ones that give to the society. We are really part of the people that focus so much on brooding or on building, on society building. A lot of people have their mothers as their first doctors, their first teachers. You know, the society is really built by women, and so it's important that the society is built to support and encourage women, and, you know, have conversations around how we can make the society better by including the other gender.
Okay, so let me pick your thoughts on this. They say it's a man's world, like you said, right? But women say women rule the world. How true is that, if you add this together?
It's a man's world, but women rule the world. I think I've already talked about how women rule the world. If as growing up as a child, if your first point of contact is, and the first formative years, you spend a lot of your formative years with women, and so the ideologies, the upbringing, you know, all of that is passed down from women, and it's not about say a title or a physical position. Most times it's about influence, and so when rulership is majorly about influence, and you know, and I mean formative years where everybody is basically influenced by women in their formative years, and so that's how we are able to rule, right? Because we are supposed to be in that position of influence, but of course there are certain things that keep us that keep women bound, that don't allow us to really express ourselves and, you know, go further into really expressing our full potential. So.
Okay.
All right, Cynthia, and I think I can also add to that because it's International Women's Day and I'm a woman. I think that women had to start seeing women rule the world just so the men can see the many things that women can do. Not necessarily rule in the word rule, but for the men to begin to also look and say, okay, these women are bringing something to the table.
Exactly.
After all, you know?
Exactly.
So there's this thing, and this I hear women supporting women thing. But then all the time when women lose at elections and everywhere, we hear the men saying, it's because even the women don't even support women. How do they expect to go? So do you agree that women do not support women? And to what extent is this new movement, as it were, women supporting women, to what extent is that helping?
So it's part of the sensitization. Now, I agree maybe in times past, because of the way we are socialized, we feel that even the women do not believe that they have something to offer, right? Because of socialization, you hear things like women should only be seen and not heard, and then you see in the political space a woman is contesting for a political position, and you may find some women not supporting her, but I think is as a result of not being well informed, right, of not being well sensitized, is a result of our socialization. But like I said earlier, when you said how do I feel, I like that we're having these conversations and we're bringing it to light so that it's obvious what we bring to the table. And now I see a lot of women actually supporting women, because I know we had a presidential candidate as a woman. Yes, of course, it's not even the men. Not everybody supports. It's not every man that supports every man. So support is relative, right? But I'm seeing intentional efforts being made now by women. Whenever they say that there's a woman being supported, there's a woman contesting for an electoral position or for a sphere of influence.
Even at the primaries level, right? A woman is running for a position. We already know how the two first discussants have talked about the lack of adequate resources for the woman. So the men, because of the resources available to them, are also able to get the women in the party to get on their side. So why is it that the women in the party will not understand that the woman standing for that position does not have enough resources and just go with her? I mean, if they agree with what she stands for.
Well, so it's socialization. I'll still take it back to socialization, right? Because we need to start changing our mindsets and start renewing our minds to be able to support, regardless of resources. Yes, I understand how money is a tool, financial resources is a tool, but human resources is also a tool, right? And so we as women need to encourage and support more women, and especially when we're seeing that we're not the only ones. Like you said, men are backing up these women and getting them on the table. So it's our duty, and that's one of the reasons why we celebrate this day. It's not only to enlighten the men, but also to enlighten the women, so that we can understand the importance of female representation in places of influence. So it's really important that people are sensitized, that people are enlightened to, you know, especially the women folks, and down to the grassroots, because you and I may have that understanding, but what are we doing to sensitize the women in the rural areas that have been socialized to think that she's a woman, she's not supposed to be there, why is she's supposed to be at home taking care of her children, right? So that's what happens. It's a mindset thing, okay. Right? It's a mindset thing.
Okay, we've had arguments about how people argue about is it about gender equality or is it about gender balancing? Which should we be going for? Because people make the case and the argument that if you talk about gender equality, it's more like you saying men being equal, women being equal with men, when already, even physically, men and women are not the same, and there is a clear role for men and for women and the rest of them. Where do we draw the line? How do we draw that distinction?
So when we say gender equality and gender inclusion, of course everybody has their roles to play, but it doesn't mean that my role is less important than your role, right? We're not saying it's not a competition, right? It's a matter of we should be given access. Not for some time ago, women were not allowed to drive cars. Some time ago, women were not allowed to vote. Even in some countries, I know that people still frown at women participating in politics, right? It's just giving me access to a better life as a woman. So it's not, the equality here is not about competing for roles or being seen as competing for roles or saying, but it's giving me the same level playing ground. It means I should not, because I'm female, there shouldn't be a bias towards me. And you see that happen especially in the workplace, right? There are times, if you take a poll, you see that a lot of women would have to work 5 times as hard before they could prove themselves in the workplace to their male counterparts. And you see things like pay inequality. We're all on the same level with the same educational experience and the same years of educational qualification and the same years of experience. But when we're negotiating salaries, they'll pay the man higher than they would pay me, and it's not because I don't have anything to offer. So that's what we're advocating for when we're talking about equality. It's not particularly a competition. We're just saying that women also deserve to have access to a quality life, like our male counterparts do.
All right. Every March 8th, every year we celebrate Women's Day, and this kind of conversations are had. People, there will be a lot of, I'm sure around the town today, even in Abuja, there will be a lot of events here and there. Yeah. How much of follow-up is done after the day, so that by 8th of March next year, we can actually say, oh, this is what has been recorded between last year and now, so that, you know, if there are improvements, there could be a gauge, sort of.
Yeah, so one of the things that can be done is to invest in R&D, research and development, and monitoring and evaluation of things like this. So especially for policymakers, when we're putting policies in place, there should be a monitoring there should be a monitoring aspect of that, of the policy, right? And I think it should go beyond March 8th. We should have reports, maybe quarterly, or at women forums, in the Senate, at national assemblies, in the workplace. There should be some resources dedicated to research and development and monitoring the impact of some of these things, because whatever it is that you don't monitor, sometimes you're making a lot of impact but you don't know because you've not put it together, right? But we need to focus on monitoring. We need to put more energy on research and development, right? I know sometime last year there was a research around women participation in politics, but I think it was anchored by Lofty Inc. Allied Partners, and a lot of findings came off of that report. Can we push this report in the media? Can people see the impact of women's participation?
Yes, because if something is done about such reports, maybe we'll get results. Because this year the performance or participation of women is nothing to write home about.
Exactly, really. It's nothing to write home about, and so we need to actually dedicate resources into research and development. We need to dedicate resources into monitoring and evaluating the efforts that are being made towards gender inclusion.
All right.
So it's a very key thing to do.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia Mbakogu Uzomba, for joining us. Cynthia is an entrepreneur and people and culture manager at Lofty. She joins us to talk about the International Women's Day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having
Daybreak.
me.
All right. Well, that's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up with us across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. I am Ayuba Ila. Join us again tomorrow for another time on the program.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. And to the women, enjoy your day. My name is Stella Yaji. Do have a pleasant day.